Hello, everyone. Adam Mitchell here from Running a Dojo Radio, and I want to welcome you to tonight's broadcast for a traditional martial arts school owner and perspectives and ramblings about how to best serve your student and run your traditional martial arts school. Hope you guys had a fantastic week, and tonight we're going to be speaking about the contract debate and why contracts, in many ways, student agreements, as I prefer to call them, are a must in your dojo. Before I get into it, though, I want to talk about a couple perspectives. I was going through some old notes of mine, and as many of you know, I spent about 10 years in the martial arts industry, spent an enormous amount of money on business consultants and my own personal learning curve, and my hope was to be able to build, probably like yourself, to build a strong student based and curriculum-driven martial arts school so that I could serve my students and be able to serve the martial art that I studied and my instructor to the best of my ability. So I thought that by hiring some of the best consultants in the business, the most expensive consultants, that I'd be able to gather and gain perspectives and business models that would help me to grow my school. And in many ways it did. But anyways, I was going through some of my old notes, and I found a list of the top 9. Actually, it's the top 8. The top 8 ways to keep your students. And what was interesting is that I actually took this from a conference that I attended out in Las Vegas some years ago, and I really liked it, and I actually have a lot of respect for the instructor at the time, who was the coach, that was the business consultant, whatever you want to call him, at the time, who was teaching. And what I want to do is I want to share with you my notes underneath each one of their points. So if you want to go ahead and take a pen out right now and write these down, they're pretty interesting. I'll probably go ahead and put it up on my blog as well. But how to keep your students your students. The first thing is a real no-brainer. It's to teach great classes. It's to be engaging. It's to be animated, but not a cartoon. It's to not have fun and games on the mat. For a traditional martial artist, it's my firm belief that you do have to have command presence, that you're not someone who's silly and joking. Especially with the kids, one of the things that I always do when I'm teaching my children's program is I tell my kids to stop smiling. Now, I know if I were to get up on the stage at a martial arts business conference and I looked at 100 school owners and I said, everybody, I want you to go back to your dojo and I want you to look your kids straight in the face when they're on the mat training, they're practicing their front kicks, and I want you to look them straight in the face and say, get the smile off your face. That I'd probably get booed off the stage pretty quickly. But the reality is that smiling's contagious, and I love it. And you're not going to find anybody in the world who loves seeing a child smile more than me. But in the dojo, I want them to have a different mindset. I don't want them to be mean, and I don't want them to be turn them into some type of fighting animal or anything like that. But what I do want is when my students are training with each other, I want them to have a sense of seriousness, and I want them to have a mindset of self-control and their ability to turn that smile on and off. You know, martial arts training isn't meant to be fun, no matter how you cut it, especially for children. Parents say, well, you ask a parent, why do you want your kid to come to the dojo? Why do you want your child to start martial arts? You usually get an answer, I want them to have self-confidence. I want them to learn discipline. I want them to be motivated. I want them to also get some self-defense. When you write all those words down and you look at them and you look at the path to getting there and how do you accomplish those goals that parent has? What is the modality of serving that student so that they can acquire those characteristics for their life? No matter how you cut it, gaining those characteristics cannot be done in any fun way. Those are not fun things to get. A martial arts school is not meant to be a place of fun. If they want to have fun, they can go to Chuck E. Cheese, or they can go buy something at Toys R Us. But when a kid comes into the dojo, they walk into an environment that is structured, that is disciplined, and it's also very foreign. And there's an interesting thing here too, or if you're not familiar with the leadership principle of authority versus influence, they're walking into a world of influence. They're not walking into a place where they have to be. For example, if a police officer comes up behind you and they have their lights on in your car, you have to pull over. You have no choice in who your mother or your father are. They are or were an authority figure in your life at one time. You have no choice over that. That kid has a choice on whether or not they want to be in your dojo. If you think you're an authority figure over that child, you're wrong. You're an influence. They can walk out of that door anytime that they want. But while they are there, you have to make that environment what it truly is meant to be. And it's a martial arts dojo. And so while they're there, you don't want them, of course you want them to be, to look at martial arts training with excitement, and you want them to be ambitious, and you want them to be enthusiastic about being there. You do want them to have a good time, but you don't want to be entertainment for them. You don't want you want to be entertaining, but you don't want to be an entertainment. You want to be animated, but you don't want to be a cartoon. You don't want the place to turn silly. I'm not a fan of fun and games. I don't think that a martial arts school you should be playing games. At special events, of course, if you have a program for children and one of the frameworks that you use for teaching or conveying a lesson is in a game, then that's great. But for your regular classes, from start to finish, you're not spinning plates and you're not a cartoon. You're teaching those kids quality martial arts. And actually, when I tell my kids to get the smile off their face, I say it in a grandfatherly way. I mean, short of other words. But what I want is I want my young students to have to be in an environment of seriousness and trust. And they know that when they're working with their training partner, that kid's not smiling at them. They're not goofy. They're not having small talk. They're training. So you want to be able to, number one, you want to be able to teach great classes at every level. And then number two is you want to teach great martial arts. Now, most people I know on this broadcast are instructors and teachers or teachers in training of quality martial arts. And I'll be honest with you, no matter how you cut it, just about every martial art out there has got its good qualities to it. And I know there's probably a couple of you out there that are shaking your head right now, but the reality is some of the large commercial schools, maybe a big Taekwondo school in your town, it might have 1,000 members, and people like yourself might shake a stick at it or make fun at it, from time to time. But the reality is that it's a place for kids to go to other than sitting home playing video games or hanging out in a parking lot somewhere. It's a place where they can go to. They can be creative. They can be constructive. They can be leaders, and they can form some characteristics in them and get some influence from some older people that they might not get elsewhere. So I'm a fan of martial arts schools at all levels, as long as they're not damaging, as long as they're not taking away from the lives of people in exchange for serving the ego of the instructor. So that said, you want to teach great martial arts. You want to keep the martial arts safe. You want to keep your students active. You want to keep them challenged. Number three, you want to be able to understand why your student is there. Now, I know that in some of the commercial models, when I was in the industry, one of the things that we did is we did these student survey, or we did on an introductory class. A student would come in and we do an interview with them, and there would be these sheets. What are the qualities that you want to get out of a martial arts program? And the parents would check. I want my, all these different things. Every parent would want everything on the list. Actually, do you want your child to have discipline, self-confidence? Do you want them to be more motivated? Do you want them to develop a work ethic? Do you want them to have fitness? Do you want them to lose weight? All these things. And parents are going to fill in everything. Really what you're doing is you're pre-framing them, and you're trying to show them all of the opportunities that martial arts are going to provide for their child. And that's kind of cool. It's just a simple sales tactic that every used car salesman has. But I don't believe in that. I would rather my prospects spend time on the mat engaging with me, engaging with the other students in my dojo, and smelling the air of my dojo and feeling the mat under their feet, and hearing the lessons, rather than sitting there and having a life lesson discussion. So, But you do need to understand the core values of what it is that your student needs. And you as an instructor, you should be able to pick that up. I don't think this is anything that really has to be written down and put on file for your members. But you should have that type of desire in you as a leader to be able to look at each student. You know, I got a student at my dojo, this wonderful woman. She's a single mom. She has 4 children. She's gone to Japan with my group. She's done so much. And, you know, I'll be honest, for a lot of my senior students, she was a bit of a challenge to train with. But I identified something in her that in one of my students who might be, 29 years old, I identified something different. For example, I've got one student who's a police officer, and then I've got another student who's a grandfather. So what are the needs that those 2 students have? They're going to be different. You need to be able to communicate to those individual students at different levels, and you need to be able to serve what those needs are. So understanding exactly why your students are there is a priority. Number 4 is you want to keep your students active. This consultant said you want to keep them active with different profit centers, meaning you want to keep them active in your nunchuck seminar, in your glowing hula hoop program, in your flame throwing. You take all these parents' night outs and sleepovers and all these different profit centers. I don't believe that that's keeping someone active in your dojo. I think it's just selling. And that's really all it is. So my notes were, and I like this continuum that this consultant was putting out there. Like I said, I respect this guy. That's why I'm sharing this information with all of you. But you want to keep the students active in what I put in is the culture of the dojo. In the culture of the dojo. And this has been a huge thing for the existence over the last 13 years of my school, is that instead of talking about taking the kids, doing doing a dojo trip to the park and having them jump on the trampoline, or having a pizza night out, or taking all the students to Chuck E. Cheese, or I know a lot of schools, they have a bowling night. Like, what the heck does that have to do with martial arts? What does that have to do with the reason they came to you and decided to have you as an influence in their life? Now, that doesn't just mean kids. It also means adults as well. So what I do instead is I have my students very much engaged in the culture of my school. And this is sort of a double-edged sword here. It's my activities and the programs and the things that I do outside of the dojo are Japanese based, based on the origins of my martial arts. So an example is going to be, we do trips down to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. We have, we donate to the Met. So we have an affiliation with them, and over the years we've had a number of trips down there where we have some private exhibit showings of the Japanese arms and armor collection there. It's a fantastic opportunity. And then all the students have 2 hours after that to roam around the Met and go to different places that they like. We do a children's trip down there, and then we do an adult trip. And then after that, we go to one of New York City's really fine Japanese restaurants, and we have a great experience there. So that's our dinner night. That's, instead of going bowling, we go to the Met, and we have the curator of the Arms and Armor collection give us a private showing. It's pretty cool. And another example might be embu, or demonstrations. I spoke about this in one of the other broadcasts, and I can't express to you the effect that this has on your students from white belt all the way up to your top students, and allowing them to participate in the demonstrations that your school is represented in your community. So having them there and just inviting them. So if it's an adult embu, or a demonstration where your adults are going to be doing some sword demonstrations, maybe it's a cherry blossom festival or a spring festival in your community, which, if you haven't heard me talk about that, you need to. If you're a school owner in your community, you need to be the spearhead. You need to be the pioneer of your county's cherry blossom festival, your Sakura Matsuri, or your spring festival, and you need to get every restaurant that has an Asian influence, and every store and everybody involved, and you create something huge. You don't have to do any other marketing for your school the entire year if you do this one thing correctly. But anyways, getting back to my point, in involving your students in the culture of your school, you have events that are culturally based, that are off the mat, that are outside the dojo, that allow your students to engage with their colleagues in the dojo and other martial art families at those events. So, like I said, if you were to be at a festival and you had a sword demonstration, it was an adult only demonstration. Of course, you want to invite the kids. If you've got a kids program, you want to invite their families and tell the children to wear their uniforms. Have them feel proud of your dojo and get them out there. So these are just a couple of examples of involving your students in the culture of your dojo. And then number 5 is keep the students active in the next thing was to keep the students active in programs where, like, fundraising programs for the dojo. This consultant spoke about doing car washes and stuff like that, and tag sales. I didn't really get that, but what I did take away from that is involving my students in the welfare of my dojo. In other words, after every class, one of the really big things in my program is having my students clean the dojo, having them clean the mats after every class, washing the mats. The children there's a specific way that they wash the mats after every single class. When we have a guest instructor or my sensei who's from Japan might come to visit our dojo, the evening before, we literally clean the top. I mean, from the ceiling to the light cups to everything in the dojo, from top to bottom, gets cleaned and purified. And having my students wash the windows and having my students involved in the health and the welfare of my school is a huge thing. It's very, very important for them to be involved at that level. A lot of schools will hire a cleaning agency to come in the middle of the night and vacuum and clean the mats and spray and wash the windows and everything like that. I don't understand why you would do that. I of course understand from if you're a business and from a sanitary perspective, and from you would rather pay an organization to come into your business, pay them $60 to clean the place, rather than spending your own 4 hours to do it, or however long it takes. I understand that. It makes good sense. But there is something spiritual about your students taking ownership of the health of their dojo that you can provide for them. And it's not like you don't want to create forced labor and you don't want to make them do that. When you make the opportunity available to them, and there's a list of chores that need to be done around the dojo, you will see your students rise to that and do it. And this is something that retains the student. They feel obligated to that. I've actually had students that have told me, old students that I might have bumped into at Starbucks, or there's one example I know of. This young lady used to train at my dojo. She told me how much she missed. She didn't say, "Oh, I miss, training with this person. I miss doing sword classes." She said, "I miss cleaning the dojo." Think about that for a second. Think about how powerful that is. It really, I took 2 steps back when she said that to me, but that really resonated, and it made me, when this consultant said that from the stage, this is what I put down in my notes. I did not write down wash cars. So, number 5, keep the students active in the welfare of the dojo. Number 6, keep your community involved. Have community involvement. Now, what I mean by this is keep the community, not the community of students, but the actual community that your dojo is involved in your dojo. Now, going back to that example that I had of hosting a spring festival at your school. Now, if you have the facilities and the resources to do that at your location, then that's fantastic. At one time, I did have that. If you don't, then of course you can go to your local chamber and you can go through your chamber. If your chamber has a park, or you can go to your Parks and Recreation department and you can host some type of festival and get your community involved. And do joint ventures with other businesses. Another example that I use of community involvement is when the tragedy happened in Japan, when the tsunami, the earthquake happened, then I rose to the occasion and I had local businesses join with me. I went to their business and I talked to the owner. I said, "Listen, man, we're working with Save the Children and we need to raise some money fast to help people. Will you be there at my side and help me?" And the response that I got was phenomenal. And the response that I got has resonated to this day. So community involvement, having your community work with you, is a huge thing. And there's a lot of different examples that I have of that, and I'm happy to share them with you if you want. Next is get the families involved. Get the families involved in your dojo. Have parents involved at a number of different levels, but make the parents feel important. You know, a lot of the commercial models that commercial martial arts school owners will use is they'll have parents come out onto the mat and hold the bags or hold the kicking shields and get the parents out there. Yeah, you know, I think that's fine, but what my experience is when I used to do stuff like that is I discovered that when the moment I let a parent come onto the mat thinking that I was doing something good and allowed them to hold the bag, then all of a sudden that parent became an instructor. All of a sudden that parent became entitled to tell other students what to do, and all of a sudden that parent became entitled to bark commands from the floor from that day forward. So once you set your expectations and your guidelines for your guests, and I hope you have, and those guidelines are on a nice framed, wall-mounted frame right near your seats, if you do have a foyer or anything like that, and those guidelines are very, very visible, people are going to be quiet, but once you allow them to come on the mat and you put them in your uniform and you put your black belt around them and you give them the opportunity, even if it's just to hold the bag, they are going to take that opportunity and they're going to run with it. Don't go there. So, but you do want them involved. You want them involved at all sorts of levels, and you want to demonstrate to them how important they are to you. So, you want to number 8. You want to be able to charge. This consultant said, maximize your profit, and charge more than you think you're worth. And the number 9 was driving home the point, and that's very famous in business models. If you know Business 101, then you know this. If you're someone from the startup world, you've been involved in startups and businesses and business coaching and any of this, you know this very well. A lot of small business owners will go in and they will say, well, if the guy next to me, my competitor next to me, is charging $80, then I'm going to charge $75. But time and time again, it's proven that if the guy next to you is charging $80 and you're offering a fair, comparable product, but you are able to go above and beyond the service that they're offering, then you can realistically charge double what they're charging, because people are going to look left and look right and say, hey, this is the same thing, but this guy's charging double. Why is that? I want to go see why. And when they go see why and you're able to justify that, then you're going to make the sale. So there's a lot of justification to saying, don't charge what you think you're worth, charge what you would want to be worth. In other words, like, charge a premium, charge $200 a month, charge $250 a month. I was sucked into this, and I actually was for 3 months. I charged more money per month than any martial arts school in the United States, second to Stephen Oliver's Mile High Karate in Colorado. And I was consulting under Mr. Tommy Lee, and we built a model so that I could charge. I searched all over the country to find out who was charging the most per month, and what I did is I went $5 above that just to see what would happen. Now, I'm not at all like that. I learned from this experience, and I'm sharing it with you, hoping that you'll learn as well. But it worked, man. People signed up, and people didn't want to leave. People love paying that. And I found that those students had, they were easier to manage. They were much, much lower maintenance. They were more proud of what they were doing because of the amount of investment that they had made. They were just better overall students. And I couldn't spend the money fast enough like it was coming in. I could not believe that when I made a jump from $125 a month to $248, I believe it was, a month, that I was selling programs all day long, if you could believe that. So that's what this consultant made as their point 8, which is to charge a premium for your classes and make sure that you have upgrade models that, there's always another step forward. There's always another upgrade. There's your basic loser program, and that's what you tell them. That way they sign up for the student program, and then when they see that they can become a black belt, you sign with the black belt program, and then you sign them up to the black belt excellence program, which involves weapons, and then from there you go to the black belt excellent leadership program, where they can become a senpai, and then from there, once they're doing that and they're paying $200 a month, and you upsell them to the black belt excellence leadership masters program, and it goes all the ways up to become the great grandmaster program, where you've sold your children. And literally, I mean, these programs are so draconian. They're so, like, they just go on and on and on. These business models are insane. My notes are: charge fair and even membership. The reason why I stepped away from that amount of monthly tuition is because I knew in my heart, if I wanted to send my kids to that dojo, I wouldn't be able to afford it. So shame on me for not allowing people who couldn't afford it, to not allowing them to go to my dojo. And I had to step away from that. And I had to charge fair and even. Now, this is what I mean. You don't hear this a lot. If you're a martial arts school and if you put all of the tuitions in one line, every student and what they pay a month, or what they're, how much you're charging them, or what they're compensating the dojo with in exchange for your teaching. If you put them all, you line them up and you looked at them, would you have an even playing field? Would everybody next to each other be paying or compensating the dojo, or whatever your model is? Would it be the same? Or, hey, this guy's my buddy, man, so I'm going to charge him $60 a month, but, I don't know these people, so I charge him $100. Or, this guy's on hard times, so, I'm going to let him train for free. But meanwhile, how do you know that the person next to them isn't having hard times, but they just have too much pride, or have the courtesy to not impose you with their lives' problems, but they're doing whatever the hell it takes to make sure that the dojo they love and the sensei that they honor gets what he or she's duly worth, and fulfilling their promises and obligations to you. So think about that for a second. That's what I mean by even. You cannot charge someone one rate and then charge another person another rate based on your own personal bias. It has to be even. And that's also what I mean by fair, because it's not fair to the person next to them if they're paying a lot less or they're compensating less. They're actually taking advantage of you. Even though you think you're doing a good thing, you're being charitable, and you're doing, you're not. You're not. And if you're someone who says, well, you know what, man, I don't charge for my martial arts lessons. That's up to you. That's cool. But what are people giving in return? What are they doing in return to help preserve and to protect the tradition and the heritage of the martial art that it is that you're teaching them? There has to be a give and take. There has to be. Now, I'm not saying it has to be financial, but there has to be something there in order for that relationship to work. Last is something that the one he said, always put away 10% of your earnings. All right, sound advice. My thing was, always invest in your students. Always invest in your resources of your dojo. And this is a really important thing. Too many people just get the money and they spend it, or they're not making enough money to even pay their own bills. But when you get to that point, I found that the number that works for me and for my dojo is 20%. And this is really important. You got to invest back in your dojo, and you have to create a separate bank account. If you have a bank account for your school, create a separate account and just sock money away. And then set yourself your goals, set goals that you need that are going to, and this is what's important. You set goals that are based on bettering the student experience. If you were a yellow belt student, if you were a student who had a little bit of knowledge of what was going on, but you looked at your dojo and you said, man, wouldn't it be cool if, and fill in that line. Then begin saving for it and deliver it in a massive way. I'm working on that right now, guys, actually. I'm working on that with some fitness equipment that I'm making right now. You can see the tooling and all the work that I'm doing down in my basement for my students. It's pretty awesome. Wait till you guys see what I do. I think you're going to really value it. Wow. Half an hour went by. I'm regurgitating this information that I got from a really good seminar in Vegas and my own perspective and my own twist on it. I hope you got some value from that. I'll just summarize it again. Number one, be a great teacher. Teach great classes. Number two, teach great martial arts. Number three, understand why your student is there and speak to them from that. Number 4, keep your students active in the culture of your dojo. And make sure you set cultural events, culturally based events, and have everyone participate in it. Have your families get involved in the organization of it. And number 5, keep students active in the welfare of your dojo. Have them participate in the cleaning and the maintenance and the upkeep of your school. Keep your community involved. Have reach out, do joint ventures and programs with community members. Number 7, keep your families involved. Have your families participate in your events and have them participate in the management of the events. Never have them answer phones. Never have them come out onto the mat and hold bags. Never have them clean your bathroom. But have them involved in the events. So, number 8, charge a fair and even tuition. I'm going to tell you something. If one of you have probably lost, if you've got over 20 students, then you have most definitely lost someone who never wanted to tell you the real reason as to why they quit. But the reason they quit is because they found out that the person next to them was paying half the price that they're paying. And they said, screw that guy. And they walked. And they never told you that, but I guarantee you that that's happened. So check yourself on that, guys. Important stuff. And then lastly, I put in invest. Invest in your student experience. Invest in your students. Invest in your dojo. So that's it. That's pretty cool stuff. I hope you guys got some value on it. Let me know what you think. Let's get to the topic now. The contract debate and why they're a must. This is a heated one, everybody. So I'm just going to say this right up front, and I'm not meaning to hurt anyone's feelings, but if you're teaching martial arts and there's no written agreement that is contractually sound between you and the recipient of your teaching or your service, then you're foolishly putting your family's assets and your future at extreme risk. Think about that for a second. You have to have that agreement in place. You're probably thinking that you're someone who's you're keeping it real by not having a clearly defined document of expectations between you and your students, but you're actually being kind of stupid. You should have no place teaching any modern or any self-defense, anything like that. You should not be teaching self-defense when you yourself don't know the first thing about protecting your own assets and the sustainability of your dojo by hanging yourself out to be ravaged in litigation. You need to get off the mat if you're thinking like that, because you're not protecting yourself. Now, those of us who do understand contracts, get that they're in place to serve the rights of your students and the general health of the dojo. Unfortunately, it's been a result of the ultra-conservative traditional wannabes combined with the asshole school owners who take their students to court for failure to fulfill their payment terms. And that's what's demonized the contract in the discussion, of professional martial arts teaching. Saying that a contractual obligation did not exist in the history of fighting arts around the globe only demonstrates one's ignorance and I think their total lack of understanding in that which they supposedly master. How many times have you heard someone say, "Well, I don't use contracts because I'm super traditional." But there's nothing really further from the truth about that. The commitments that someone had to make in an old dojo. Oftentimes, they had the ritual of keppon, which meant that one's going to ink their name and obligatory duty to their dojo in blood from a severed hand. Actually, in some old schools, these commitments are still retained. Also, a family would petition instructors sometimes for years to allow entry of their son into a dojo. And when a student was accepted, the expectations of that student, that stuff was like borderline maddening for these guys back then. So in comparison to the commitments of the young bushi of olden times, in martial arts students, in today, the old bushi who the martial arts students today who we emulate, I think that they would probably look at us like a bunch of sorry little bitches. So because we complain about these little pieces of paper and these contracts and say that they're not traditional. Meanwhile, the obligations that the warriors of olden times took to learn what it was that they had to learn in order to survive, or what it was that was taught in their view, the obligation that they took was huge. And we're asking students to make small commitments out of courtesy and say, hey, look, we want you to commit a certain amount of time to what it is that we're teaching so that you understand what it is that we do, a little bit about our heritage, and you get some fundamental movement down so that you keep yourself safe. And the wannabe traditionalists and these ultra conservative school owners are like, well, I'm so traditional, I don't use contracts. These people don't know what they're talking about. A contract should never be what separates us from the essences of Bushido. Instead, I think it's what cements it in many ways. I don't really, the whole discussion about contracts, it isn't about you and I. Not so much. It's more about making sure that your students understand what your expectations are of them and what their rights are if you, your staff, or any part of your business breach those expectations. The first step to the contract discussion is to understand that it's an absolute must for every school to have a clear and comprehensive document that details your student terms of attendance and your business policies. There must be an expected payment terms, calendar of participation terms and liability releases and all that stuff. Yeah, I did say business, just by the way. I know I did say that. Again, if they're paying you anything, cash or chocolate chip cookies in exchange for your time and service, you're in business. As resistant as you want to be to the idea, and as yucky as it may sound, it is what it is. So let me think of this for a second. Here's a common scenario that I know a lot of you are familiar with, and let's step back and look at this scenario. A parent wants to enroll their kids in a martial arts program. They counsel their child. Maybe their brother, their kid's uncle, has a black belt, and the guy lives on the other side of the country, and they ask them to help find a good dojo online in their community. So, of course, the uncle is going to give some sage advice. And they'll probably say something like, ask if they use contracts. And if they say yes, don't go there. I'm sure you guys have all heard this. In fact, I'm certain a few of you have most likely even been that uncle. It's well intended, but it's dumb advice. Here's how the discussion, if that did happen, here's how the discussion would go down in my dojo. Someone would come into my school and they would say, I'd welcome them to my dojo, or they'd call me up and they'd say, do you guys use contracts? And I know where that's going immediately, so I kind of tend to smile and I say, yeah, of course. Then I'll usually get some sign of letdown with a sentence that's basically going to they'll probably respond with, well, we don't really want to train here then. I'm prepared for this. And I clearly understand their misinformed concept of what's going on here. There are other possibilities for their hesitation, though, and this has to be recognized. Possibly they've already been burned before at another martial arts school. So regardless, I roll with it, and I have their best intentions in mind. So I'm going somewhere with this. Okay, I'll say. But just out of curiosity, why wouldn't you want to use a contract, I ask? Always ask that. And, their response is going to be, well, we've heard horror stories of people getting taken advantage of by signing contracts. So then I'm going to answer in a unique way. I'm going to say, okay, yeah, I understand this. By the way, if I told you that there's no term obligation and you could pay as you train, what method of payment would you prefer? Cash, check, or credit card? Or possibly there's another, maybe there's another form you'd prefer. And I'll admit, it's sort of a loaded question. Almost everyone is going to say that they'll bring a check in at the end of the month. Some will say cash, but most working folks like to keep the green in their pocket. I'll be able to bring in a check each month, they say. Okay, so regardless of their tuition payment, what you have to understand is that when this is allowed, you, first of all, before I get into my response, when you allow this, You're allowing them to pay you when they want on their terms. Do not do this. And again, I'm not talking about making money here, guys. I'm not talking about a profit and loss statement. What I am talking about is the model of your martial arts program. Do not allow someone to get on their terms and control how they pay you. I can't stress that enough. I know that you're thinking, well, I got that one guy, he's a salesperson, he gets his commissions on the 16th of every month, and I have to be creative and I have to help them out. No, you don't. You do. You want to, but you need to say, this is how the dojo works. You either choose to be a part of it or not. That's fine, because I got a line of people waiting to get in here. And I also understand very, very clearly that many of us are struggling. We're in a downsizing economy. We just came out of a recession. Many of us believe we're in a recession, and many of us believe that we're steamrolling towards the greatest depression. I get it. And I also understand that the people who come to what it is that we do are coming here based off of the amount of disposable income that they have on, for dance lessons, horseback riding lessons, karate lessons, whatever. I understand this. But this does not mean that you need to change the fabric of what it is that you do to help one person. When you do, the fairness and even thing comes back into play. They're going to say, oh, I pay on the 16th. Well, wait a minute. We were told that we had to, and then everything starts to fall apart. You got to stick to your guns. So let's go further. Let's see how this whole thing plays out. So without sounding like a jerk, after that person says to me that they're going to pay by check, I'm usually going to respond with, well, okay, sure, but you do realize that your check is a promissory obligation for payment as well, right? And since you stated that you're uncomfortable with this, is there another form of payment that you may be more comfortable with? So I kind of, like a wise ass, I turn it back at them. And, they usually get the point, but it can sometimes go a little bit further. Oftentimes I get people who don't quite understand what I'm saying because they've said, well, I don't want to use contracts. I'd rather pay in check. What's a check? A check is a contract. So can I pay monthly by credit card, they'll ask? I say, sure, but maybe that's not best for you either, because every time you pay with your credit card, you sign a contract to pay them. And geez, you know how tough they can be. Is there possibly another form of payment that you'd rather use? Yeah, it's usually by then they get my drift. And before they respond, I'm going to really and clearly reinforce my point. And I'll say something like, let me make something really clear. Even if we never see each other again, you're looking to enroll yourself or your child into a program that involves safety concerns. It involves physical contact and interaction with other adults. Or if you're enrolling your child, it involves physical interaction with an adult and your child. As well, there's a financial and time investment on your end. And chances are, it's going to be a long-term relationship, as you do hope yourself or your child reaches some degree of proficiency, correct? Knowing this, I'm going to highly recommend that you do consider a professional facility to deliver the finest care for your family, and one that defines for you with absolute clarity what you can expect from them in return for your valuable time and investment. So, people get it that time and they understand. Okay, well, this is a place of professionalism. It's not just some bozo in his backyard that's kicking boards. They understand now at this point where I'm saying, look, man, this contract is for you. This contract is for your rights. How many times have you guys heard a story of, hey, I gave this guy $2,000 to be a member of his martial arts school, and the next day I showed up for class and the place was closed? That's not uncommon. It's not uncommon. But the thing is that we need to, especially in the traditional environment, we need to reverse those roles, because they're coming to us. They're coming to us for certain things, and we need to we need to be a model of what those expectations are. So, not just as a professional, but also as a parent. I just can't get my head around people who actually brag about putting their future at risk or not providing clear policies and expectations for their students by not having any type of formal written agreement. It's not traditional, It's not professional, and hear me very clearly on this. It is absolutely reckless. All professional operations that are worth their weight in sand will make certain that the relationship between their customers and themselves, it is clearly defined in a membership or customer agreement of some kind. You know, anybody who's professional, they're mindful of the rights of their customers and the commitments that they make to their customer. And I'm sure you're going to agree that not addressing this is careless at best and is not something I want to see in a person who is working with my child or my wife or myself. Now, I know I might be pissing some of you guys off who might not use contracts or maybe looking at starting a program, or you've got a bad taste in your mouth about the history of this stuff. But let me drive a couple points home. As I pointed out, clarity and communication are the hallmarks of professionalism. I think we all know that. Therefore, it stands without argument that student agreements are not just necessary, but they exist to serve the overall experience, the overall student experience of your teaching. So let's move away from this kind of collective mindset that contracts are somehow evil and that by using them, you're branded as a money-hungry swindler disguised as a martial artist. And isn't that really the thing, or you use contracts? It's really like the whole discussion that we have with people in this industry or customers or people who've been exposed to martial arts schools and the whole contract thing, it comes down to an issue of money. And, you know, when I hear a fellow instructor brag to me, oh, I don't use contracts, I usually just smile at the dude and I'm like, man, this guy's stupid. I'm sorry, but you are. I'm not trying to call anybody out. But if you are engaging with someone in a physical activity of combative martial arts, and you're doing it and they're compensating in exchange for their services, and you haven't incorporated or you haven't protected your assets, you haven't protected you're messing with your children's future. You're messing with your students' future. You're putting a lot at risk, and it's stupid. You're not stupid. I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to call it. I'm not trying to be a jerk either. What I am trying to do is I'm trying to protect and share my experience with my colleagues. And I want traditional martial arts in this country to be viewed as professional, even if they have 5 students, even if you are teaching in your backyard in a dojo that is hidden behind walls and nobody, not even your wife, knows that you're doing it. When someone comes in there and you are serving them, I want you to serve them as a professional. And having a clear agreement and a list of expectations is paramount. So how do these, I just said something interesting about the contracts serving the student experience. How do these agreements serve the overall student experience? Well, by prefacing the enrollment process with a short agreement that up front, now this is where I get unique, that up front demonstrates that your number one concern is student safety and fulfillment of their time and financial investment. It's got to be up front. That's the number one thing. One of the reasons this topic has become a monster in the closet is because it's been common practice for about 30 years to mistakenly identify a purchase agreement with a membership agreement. To this day, profit-hungry program directors in every commercial martial arts school, they're quick to pull out their student agreements. That's usually provided to them by some third-party outsourced tuition management company. And nowhere on those agreements does it detail exactly what the expectations of the instructor and academy are from the rights perspective of the student. Hey guys, we're going to be here for you. Our doors are going to be open at 4 o'clock for that 4:30 class. We are going to be waiting for you on the mat. We are not going to close. We are going to make sure that we not only fulfill what we're saying, but we're going to go beyond that. Instead, the document serves as a continuity purchase agreement that assures the academy will receive calendared payments over a set time frame. And, these contracts have nothing whatsoever to do with the right of the student. They are only meant to legally shake down a student when they stop coming. Now, It's my proposal that a traditional martial arts program have the reverse attitude when drafting their agreements. Student expectations and rights should be the first thing a new member reads on those agreements. It should be the first thing. Your words must convey a strong message that your number one ambition is to protect the student and their experience within your dojo. So, like such items as making sure that there will always be a qualified instructor on the floor during training, that the dojo will always be open for a scheduled class, like I just said, and that the student safety is your number one priority, and that you do have first aid certified instructors present at all times in case of an emergency, which you do, right? Or at least the chief instructor is first aid certified, and that you've got someone always on the floor just in case. These are simple things that will show that, you know what, you're an all right guy. You're looking out for me, and I now trust you. Let's go to the next step, and let's have the discussion about what you expect from me. This is what we're doing. This is how the model of a student agreement should be. So following your students' rights, there should be a student code of conduct that briefly spells out the general expectations of each member. Examples may be that you don't allow people with a violent criminal record, drug possession, or maybe you don't allow food in the dojo, etc. As well, the code of conduct should give a summary of student protocol, such things as like attendance and other expectations that you as a teacher has of every member. Student conduct, student conduct is going to be more clearly detailed in your dojo student manual, where your policies and regulations are very clearly defined. As well, this book, your student manual, whatever you want to call it, this book should have an attached piece of paper. This is something I do, just kind of step away here for a second. But this book should has an attached piece of paper in it or on it, on a serrated edge or something they can tear off, that a student signs and returns to you stating that they have read this manual from the start to finish and that they clearly understand. They clearly understand now what is expected of them. I think that this is a very powerful thing, and this is also going to help in your student retention, because a lot of times the reason students quit and they don't come back is because they didn't understand something. There was a rule that they feel they might have broken. They're maybe humiliated, or they felt that they were punished in some way. They didn't understand it. You can get past that, and you will retain more students by making sure that they clearly understand what every regulation, policy, and expectation that the general dojo culture has of them, the student. So this piece of paper is going to be turned in, and if you do have student files, you want to keep it on the file. And it's also important. My students don't test for their first belt until they've signed that piece of paper. So, but back to contracts. The contract should also have a liability release form built into them. My recommendation is to not have two separate forms, but instead a simple release waiver on the back side of your student agreement. My student agreements actually have two vertical columns where the financial details are written on the left and the liability terms are on the right. Now, I'm not going to really get into detail about your liability release, as this should be taken up with an attorney. There are going to be different state-by-state rules. So I don't really want to talk about liability. In my program, as well as in my book, I'm going to offer a template that you can look at and you can use that will give you some insight, but you really must speak with an attorney. This isn't a suggestion. This is a demand. You have to have this. If you don't, you are really putting your neck out there to be cut. And it's take the time and make the small investment to have your liability release waiver drafted up by an attorney, and a good attorney. Make sure that you also tell them that you want it as simple and as concise as possible, because attorneys will give you a 10-page document. You want it simple. You want it one page. You do not want it including words like death, dismemberment, or anything that's going to make a prospective member raise their eyebrow. I used to have a blanket liability, and this liability said, there's a potential for death or... And a mother of a 6-year-old child would be reading this like, what? But, my attorney was like, no, you don't know, Adam. I mean, someone could, one of those hip throws, they could break their neck or something. You need to have that in there. Don't do that. Talk to your attorney. Have them point you in the right direction, but explain to them what you're sensitive to and what your concerns are, and that you want this, you want this to be simple, clear, and concise. And you don't want to spend a lot of money. Now, remember that you are doing physical activity and that it is inherently risky. So having anything in place that's going to protect you from liability, or not having anything there, again, it's too reckless, and it's not professional. You're really risking a lot. So the big question really now, as we close into the end of the broadcast here, is the big question. That's, what about finances? Should these be contractual? Should you tie someone to a financial post and whip them when they fail to pay for your services not rendered? Well, no, of course not. But the reality, again, is that very clear expectations of how a student is compensating the dojo for your teaching is vital, regardless of the size of your dojo. And again, whether it's cash or it's chocolate chip cookies, it doesn't make a difference. But the expectations have to be there. They have to be fair, and the table has to be even. Now, like my points before, your student agreement is meant to serve the student as much as it is your dojo. And if they're paying you anything, you need to clearly define and give metrics to what you'll be providing them in return. So give them the assurance that you'll be there to provide for them what they expect from you, and also the fact that a contract is in place between you and your quote unquote customer or your student. This is an interesting thing that a lot of people don't understand and they don't see, but by having that contract there, it sort of cements them from impulse. It prevents them from not coming to your dojo based on some external or impulsive reason. For example, let's just say a parent pulls their teenager out of the dojo because maybe she got in trouble and the parent is angry, and in the heat of their anger, they call the dojo with the kid sitting there, crying on the couch, and they yell into the phone, we really love you, sensei, and you've done great things for our daughter, but she needs to grow up and is being punished, and maybe we'll see you again sometime when this little brat gets her head together. I'm sure if you've been around the block for any period of time, if you've worked with children, you've got that call. If there is a contract in place, the parent understands that they cannot use the dojo as something to hang over their kid's head, and it will work as a shield, protecting your dojo from the parent's emotional baggage. So another example, maybe even a little bit more realistic, another example is when a student has been working overtime at work, and when they do have free time to attend training, they feel reluctant to show their face because they've been away or they feel they've fallen behind. This happens all the time when there's no agreement in place. You won't see a student for 3 weeks, and then you should be doing your attendance calls daily, if not at least weekly, when a student doesn't arrive. Because I consider my student's schedule to be like a doctor's appointment. If you're not here, you're getting a call from me of concern. Hey, dude, Steve, I didn't see you in class. I hope everything's all right. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Sensei. I had spaghetti for dinner. My wife makes great spaghetti last night, so I didn't come to the dojo. It's like, so I make them feel like, wow, I really let Adam down. I should have called him. So once you set this, you put this in place, and it becomes a system, people will follow it. Trust me that this is going to happen not just to your adult members, but also with kids. I haven't been to the dojo, and I feel like I'm falling behind, especially with kids. They start with someone, and all of a sudden that one kid who's consistent, or maybe they stop for the summer, they don't want to come back in September because the kids that they were with in June before they quit are now another belt level ahead of them. Having a contract in place is going to prevent that from happening. And without the contract in place, your students are going to be victim of impulse constantly. And the health and longevity of your dojo is going to ride on the ups and downs in the emotional lives of your students. And do you really want this? So guys, we're at 7:00 right now. What I'm going to do is, if it's all right with you, I'm going to run this broadcast for about another 5 minutes, because I really want to address all of this, and I want to share with you some of the framework that I use here at my dojo as far as setting up and putting the contract in place. So I'm going to go a little bit over time. Forgive me if I'm messing with your personal schedule and you're going to be late for dinner. So So, so with all this understanding, I'm going to step into some murky waters here. And I'm going to recommend that you do use term obligations so that your members stick to it. But I do it a little bit differently. I've never taken anybody to court for quitting my dojo. But I know school owners who have, and every one of them are pricks. And every one of them, they have a very bad reputation in their respective community for those actions. But I do have my students give me their word. Now, check out how I do this. I have them give me my word, and I do expect a 30-day notice prior to their discontinuance. I used to ask for a 60-day, but now I ask for 30, and I get it. 60 days, I didn't get it. 60 days, I would have people come up to me and say, "Hey, Sensei, I'm not going to be coming back anymore." And I'd look left, look right, say, what do you mean? Well, you're not going to be here tomorrow? No, I'm done. You have a 60-day notice. Oh, well, I didn't know about it until, a month ago. So I changed it to 30 days, and it works quite well. Now, if you offer a children's program, then pre-framing the parents with simply a promise from their child that they are going to stick it out for 8 months will carry so much more weight than any scare tactic that you'll most likely never use anyhow. This was a really profound change for me in how I ran my enrollment process. I have my students do a term of 8 months. Some of them do a year. Depends. I have different programs. I'm not going to get into that on this broadcast. But the finishing point that I want to make is that you use contracts. And do you use those contracts as a scare tactic? You have to think about that. So if you're not going to actually sue them for breaching terms that they signed to, why do it? Don't you think that having them give their personal word or have their child say that they're going to stick it out is going to carry a lot more weight than any piece of paper that simply serves as a demonstration that you don't trust them right from the beginning? So they're coming into your dojo. You've got them excited. You've met their expectations. They fall in love with the environment, your facility, and the Budo that you're teaching or the Kung Fu that you're teaching, whatever it is that you're teaching. And then you hit them with a wall. You hit them with a barrier that they can't get out of. And you're saying to them right up front, dude, hey, look, you're nice, but you know what? I don't trust you, so I'm having you sign this contract. I propose that they give you their word. You say, hey, look, I'm not gonna contractually tie you down to this. They're gonna quit anyway if they're gonna quit. But they're gonna quit on their conscience now. Instead of quitting, you know what? Contracts were meant to be broken. Have you ever heard that before? If you haven't, use it because it's true. But a person is only worth their word. And you know what? If I have my son, if I have my little boy promise someone that they're going to do something, am I going to make sure that he damn well fulfills it? You bet. Because what am I setting him up for if I let him back out? So this is really interesting to think about. Instead of putting in some legal terminology that if they don't pay you or you move, your dojo has to be 25 miles from their house and blah, 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 if they move, all this nonsense. It's crap. It's oppressive. I don't believe it's professional, and it definitely has no place in the traditional martial arts spectrum of teaching true, authentic martial arts to students. It is not what the founders of our traditions expected. Certainly, the obligations that students a long time ago took were way beyond any of the obligations that we expect from people today. But holding them in a court of law is just completely it has nothing to do with what it is that we're doing. So what then is the ideal framework for a student agreement that a traditional martial arts school should be? I believe that the agreement should offer, when you draft it up or you make it or you look it over again, I agree that the first thing that, like I said, to go back and to summarize everything here that I've taught in this topic, the first thing is that what a student can expect from your dojo as a member. You need to write in your agreement in big letters right up front, we are here for you. Your safety is our number one concern. Your rights are our number one concern. And your ability to progress and meet your potential is what we are going to fulfill for you, and we are going to put our name on it. This is our agreement to you. This is our contract to you. Your safety, your rights, your progress. You are going to sign up here as a member of our dojo, and we are going to take care of you. Okay. That's cool, man. Now let's have the next discussion. Dojo policies and guidelines. Okay, cool. So we've established why, that we're going to protect you, that we're looking out for you. But you know what? We also have some policies here too. And this is how the framework of our school operates. Please understand them. And we summarize them. The dojo handbook is going to go into greater detail. They're going to sign a piece of paper and give that back to you within 1 month of their being a student. And then you want to have the member contact details and other pertinent information, like maybe a medical history, or maybe they're asthmatic or whatever that may be. Contact details, email information, and stuff like that. And then membership. Then comes the financial stuff. Then comes the method of payment and what your terms are at your school. You may use a 1-year term agreement. You may use a 3-month. You may use an open-ended month-to-month. If you do use an open-ended month-to-month, that's fine. I have no problem with it. But you absolutely must put in a mandatory 30-day notice that you're going to be quitting, because it's not to eke out another payment from them. It's just freaking courtesy to let you know that they're going to be quitting. I mean, that is the gentlemanly, the Budo thing to do, right? You should let your instructor know that, hey, look, you know what, I'm going to be moving, or something came up, or whatever the situation may be. Because in that 30 days, the problem may go away. And that has happened so many times. But if they're allowed to quit early, then they're going to quit and they're not going to come back. But the situation could remedy itself within that 30 days. I can't tell you how many times that's happened. But more importantly, it's courtesy. And you know what? You cannot have the health and the welfare of your dojo hanging by a thread. You can't plan. You can't do any financial planning. You can't do any budgeting. You can't calendar your events or anything. If you have no idea what the hell's coming down the pipe in 3 months from now, if you're going month to month, you cannot tell me how much your school is going to grow 3 months from now. I mean, you can't tell me if you're one of the schools on this broadcast that has like more of like a business model, your traditional school, you're keeping it real, but you run it as a business. You're making some profit. You're reinvesting the profit back into your resources and your students' experience, and you're doing a great thing for your community. Awesome. But if you're running that and you're going month to month, you cannot tell me where your business is going to be 3 months from now. Now, tell me how viable that is. So you should have some type of term agreement in there, but the term agreement has to be structured in a way that is it's fair and it's even for everybody, yourself included. You're not a martyr. Don't be. That's not why your students come to you. They don't expect a martial arts instructor to be a martyr to some cause. Students do expect to take on an obligation. They do expect to take on a commitment. But there is a screwed up paradigm about student agreements. That paradigm was created, like I said, 30 years ago. They are oppressive. They're meant to rob people for services not rendered, and they're downright wrong. And we have to, right up front, show our prospective members that their rights, their safety, and the experience that we're here to provide for them is our priority number one, and that has to be put right at the top of that agreement. And then the last thing is going to be your release of liability. And again, this is going to be an attorney's thing. Keep it simple. Don't use death. Don't use death or dismemberment. So that's it, everybody. I've got a lot more about this topic that I can continue talking about, and I think that what I'm going to do is on next week's broadcast, I'm going to go into the discussion about contracts, and then what we're going to do is we're going to create the actual program framework. So I don't sell terms or anything like that. I sell programs. And then what we're going to do next week is we'll segue this discussion into how we build our programs and how I make the programs available to my students, and I really serve them with a fantastic experience. Everybody, this has been a fantastic discussion. I really thank you for allowing me to go an extra 10 minutes, and I hope that some of the experience that I have has at least given you some creative thought and got you thinking and had you maybe think about how you can sort of revamp your own student agreements, or how you can even start and initiate your student agreement models. And I think that you'll discover something really interesting. If you don't have a student agreement now, what I want you to consider doing is crafting a student agreement, a one-page agreement, and then contacting your students and put it into place. You need to protect your assets. You need to protect your reputation. You need to protect the martial art that it is that you study in your community. Don't put yourself out at risk. It's reckless and it's stupid. Contact your top students and say, hey, look, I haven't done this yet. I'm doing this now, but I'm doing this for your rights, so you understand what it is that we're doing. As we grow, I need to make sure that everybody understands that I'm going to be here for you and what my number one priority is, and that's your experience, your rights, and making sure that I fulfill what it is that you expect of me. So everybody, that's it. That's it for this week's broadcast on Running a Dojo. I hope you enjoyed it. I really appreciate all of you listening. It means so much to me. If you have any questions, go ahead, put them in my Facebook page at facebook.com/runningadojo or twitter.com/runningadojo, or drop me a line by email, adam@runningadojo.com. Next week, guys, I've got a huge announcement. Huge. You're going to love it. So that'll be the first thing that I come right out of the gate with. Everybody have a wonderful and safe weekend. Take care.